Hi, everyone. My name's Emily Makash. I am an architectural historian in the School of Architecture at UNC Charlotte. And this year I'm leading a seminar called Exploring Memory and Race in America. Um, I've added a little subtitle here through memorials to be a little more specific about what could be a very vague title. Um, so first, a little about myself. If you watched the video on the website, you've already heard some of this, but I wanted to repeat it in case you hadn't watched the video on the CTI website. So as an architectural historian, my work has been, both my research and my teaching has focused on the way that identity and memory intersect with the built environment. And that means I've spent a lot of time looking at historic sites, museums, exhibitions, as well as monuments and memorials, which is kind of the area that I thought would be interesting for us to talk about in the seminar this year. I've also been exploring this in our community in Charlotte through exhibitions lately, and I just have images here of two recent exhibitions, one that just closed at the Gantt Center, focused on an African-American architect who built a lot of museums focused on African-American history, and then an exhibit that I co-curated at the Levine Museum of the New South a few years ago, focused on the legacy of lynching in Charlotte. So both of these were sort of public history endeavors, partnering with local museums, exploring race and memory in Charlotte and beyond. And so sort of building off of that, I thought, again, it'd be interesting to do this seminar and to talk about how race and memory and specifically memorials as such a tangible and exciting and interesting part of the built environment, how those things all intersect. So there's obviously a ton of literature about this, and this is just a couple of book covers. Obviously, there's also journal articles and websites and all sorts of other things that we could look at. But these show us some examples of some of the things we could read depending on what time periods and subject matters and entries into this conversation the fellows are interested in exploring. In addition, some things we could talk about are literal forms of memorials and the ways in which different races, or specifically African Americans, have been depicted in monuments over time and in different places and by different authors. So that has changed, and that there's just a lot of rich material just in literally talking about the form and the way people are represented. We could talk about a lot of different themes in the memorial culture and forms and discussions and debates around how we remember enslavement or the heroism or contributions of African Americans and other racial groups. These examples actually all speak to the African American experience, but obviously we can talk about race and any minorities anyone's interested in discussing, and protest movements such as the civil rights movement, or more recently Black Lives Matter. We could talk about the temporary and permanent memorial cultures and that have risen around those. We can also talk about sort of the way monuments to white supremacy or the Confederate cause have intersected with history in the United States and different moments. This particular graph from the Southern Poverty Law Center speaks volumes about how memorial building is a product of the present rather than anything about what it's being remembered, where we see these peaks and valleys in monument building that again say more about those times than about the Civil War. And we can bring it, I'd love to have conversations that bring it close to home. This is a Confederate memorial, a white supremacist memorial that was erected in Charlotte in 1929 during a huge Confederate reunion that took place in Charlotte in 1929. So we can talk about that and when it was built and when it was removed, and I'd also like us to talk a little bit about the ways in which we know about memorial culture. And so sort of exploring the sites themselves, but also how they're discussed in the newspapers, archival evidence, photography, websites, apps. And these, I think, are ways that I hope can help us think creatively about how to introduce them in your classrooms. And finally, I hope you'll join me and Amber. I apologize that I cannot be at the open house tonight. I'm installing an exhibit in Raleigh at the North Carolina Museum of Art tonight. And but talk to Amber, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.